My name is Serafina Walsh, and I discovered my parents sold my house while I was serving overseas as a diplomatic attaché. They thought it was abandoned property after 2 years of my absence. What they did not know was that my residence carried full diplomatic immunity and protection under international law. The buyers, a local development company, had already demolished half the structure when I returned to find strangers living on my legally protected land. My parents pocketed $300,000 from an illegal sale that could now trigger an international incident. Before we dive deeper into this family betrayal that shattered everything I believed about blood loyalty, I want to know where you are watching from today. Have you ever experienced family members who prioritized money over trust? Hit that like button if family drama resonates with you, and subscribe because this story reveals how international law became my ultimate weapon for justice. You will not believe how this diplomatic nightmare unfolded. When I stepped off the plane at Reagan National Airport, after serving 18 months at the American Embassy in Prague, I expected to return to my quiet townhouse in Alexandria, Virginia. Instead, I found a construction site where my home used to stand. Workers in hard hats were installing new foundation pipes while a massive excavator sat parked in what used to be my front garden. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and called my mother. "Mom, where is my house?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, honey, you are finally back. We sold that old place since you obviously were not using it. We figured you had moved on permanently. Your father and I used the money to buy the beach condo in Florida we always wanted. You should be happy for us." The casual tone in her voice felt like ice water in my veins. "You sold my house without my permission, Mother. That is theft. That house was under diplomatic protection through the State Department." She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, Serafina, always so dramatic. It was just sitting empty for 2 years. We had every right as your family to make practical decisions. Besides, who is going to care about some made-up diplomatic nonsense?" I hung up and immediately called my father. His response was even worse. "Listen, Princess, your mother and I raised you and put you through college. We deserved something for our investment. That house was practically abandoned, and we needed the money more than you needed some empty building gathering dust." The next phone call went to my lawyer, David Morrison, who had helped me establish the diplomatic protections when I first received my Foreign Service assignment. His voice turned grave as I explained the situation. "Serafina, this is extremely serious. Your residence was officially designated as auxiliary diplomatic property under the Vienna Convention protocols. The State Department filed all necessary paperwork with local authorities. Your parents have potentially created an international legal crisis." Within hours, I had the full picture. My parents had forged documents claiming to be my legal representatives. They presented fake power of attorney papers to the real estate agent stating I had permanently relocated overseas and authorized them to handle my American assets. The buying company, Meridian Development Corporation, had purchased the property for $295,000, which was actually below market value due to the urgent sale circumstances my parents had fabricated. The fraud ran deeper than simple theft. My father had convinced my younger brother, Marcus, that I had abandoned the family and would never return to America. Marcus, who always struggled financially, was promised $20,000 from the sale proceeds as his inheritance share of what should have been my property. My parents had manipulated him into believing this was fair compensation for years of my absence. But the most devastating discovery came when I reviewed the paperwork. My mother had told the real estate agent and buyers that I had died in a car accident in Europe and they were settling my estate. She had actually produced fake death certificates and obituary notices to support this claim. She literally killed me off on paper to steal my house. The Meridian Development Corporation had acted quickly after the purchase, obtaining demolition permits and beginning construction of a luxury apartment complex. They had invested an additional $150,000 in site preparation and foundation work. When I appeared alive and with legal diplomatic protections, They faced not only financial loss, but potential criminal charges for participating in what had become an international property dispute. My parents had spent most of the money already. The beach condo in Clearwater had cost them $180,000. They had bought new cars, taken a European cruise, and given Marcus his promised share. When I confronted them with the legal implications, their response revealed the depth of their selfishness. "You were gone for almost 2 years without visiting once," my mother said during our heated phone conversation. "We figured you had found some rich European man and were never coming back. We deserved that money after all the years we supported you." My father was even more blunt. "Look, what is done is done. We are not giving back that condo, and we already spent the rest. You make good money with the government. Just buy another house and stop making such a big deal about this." They had no understanding that diplomatic property protections existed specifically to prevent this type of situation. Foreign service officers needed guaranteed secure housing upon return from assignments. The Vienna Convention protocols that protected my house were the same international laws that protected American embassies and consulates worldwide. The contempt in their voices, the complete dismissal of my career and sacrifice for my country, revealed that this was not simply about money. They had always resented my education, my independence, my choice to serve overseas rather than settling down near them with a traditional family life. Selling my house was their way of forcing me back into dependence on them, making me choose between my career and having a home in America. But they had made one critical miscalculation. They assumed I would quietly accept their betrayal to avoid family conflict. They did not realize that my years in diplomatic service had taught me exactly how to fight back, using the law, international treaties, and government resources they could never imagine or understand. I spent the next 72 hours building my case with the precision I had learned from handling complex international negotiations. My first call was to Ambassador Patricia Reynolds, my former supervisor in Prague, who immediately understood the severity of the situation. "Serafina, this is not just personal property theft. This involves the integrity of American diplomatic protections. If we allow family members to violate these safeguards, it sets a dangerous precedent for every foreign service officer serving overseas." Within 6 hours, I had official support from the State Department's Office of Legal Affairs. They assigned Attorney General Liaison Sarah Chen to coordinate with local authorities and ensure that federal diplomatic immunity statutes were properly enforced. The FBI's White-Collar Crime Division opened an investigation into the forged documents and false death certificates my parents had created. Meanwhile, I gathered every piece of evidence that proved my parents' deliberate fraud. Bank records showed they had researched property values and engaged a real estate agent 2 months before contacting me about any family matters. Email conversations between my mother and the agent revealed elaborate planning to create urgency around the sale by claiming I had financial emergencies in Europe requiring immediate liquidation of American assets. The most damning evidence came from my brother Marcus. During our first conversation since my return, his guilt became obvious immediately. "Sarah, I swear I thought you knew about the sale. Mom said you had called and asked them to handle everything because you were too busy with embassy work. She showed me text messages that looked like they came from your phone." "Marcus, I never sent any messages about selling my house. Show me what she showed you." When he forwarded the fake text conversation, the manipulation became clear. My mother had created an elaborate fictional dialogue using a messaging app that allowed custom contact names and numbers. She had literally scripted both sides of conversations to make it appear I was requesting the sale and asking family members to help coordinate everything. "She said you were embarrassed about asking for help and made her promise not to tell you that I knew about the sale." Marcus continued, his voice breaking. "I thought I was helping you by staying quiet about it." The revelation that my mother had manipulated my brother into unwitting complicity added another layer to the betrayal. But it also provided crucial testimony, proving premeditation and intent to defraud. My next step was confronting Meridian Development Corporation directly. I arranged a meeting with their president, Robert Castellano, and their legal team. When I arrived with my State Department liaison and FBI documentation, their confidence evaporated quickly. Mr. Castellano, your company purchased diplomatically protected property through fraudulent documentation. You have demolished a residence that carries international legal protections equivalent to embassy grounds. This is not a civil real estate dispute. This is a federal crime involving American foreign policy. Their lawyer, a nervous man named Thompson, tried to claim good faith purchase protections. Our clients relied on properly notarized documents and had no reason to suspect fraud. They followed all standard real estate procedures. Sarah Chen, my State Department attorney, responded with devastating precision. Your due diligence failed to identify diplomatic property registrations that are public record with Alexandria City Planning. More importantly, your clients proceeded with demolition before standard title insurance periods expired, suggesting unusual urgency that should have triggered additional verification. The meeting ended with Meridian Development agreeing to halt all construction and cooperate fully with the federal investigation. They also acknowledged potential liability for damages to diplomatically protected property, which under international law could result in financial penalties far exceeding their investment in the project. But the real confrontation was yet to come. I drove to my parents' new beach condo in Clearwater, arriving unannounced with my legal team and FBI agent Martinez, who was leading the fraud investigation. My parents' shock at seeing federal agents at their door was immediately replaced by defiance. "This is harassment," my father declared, blocking the doorway. "We are not letting you intimidate us with government bullying. We sold property that belonged to our family, and we have every right to those proceeds." Agent Martinez stepped forward with official documentation. "Sir, you have been formally accused of wire fraud, forgery of federal documents, and conspiracy to violate international diplomatic protections. These are federal felonies carrying potential prison sentences of up to 20 years. We strongly recommend you speak with an attorney before making any additional statements." My mother's reaction revealed the depth of her calculated malice. "You always thought you were better than us with your fancy government job and your foreign travels. Well, now you can see what happens when you abandon your family. We took what we deserved, and we are not apologizing for it." The FBI agent documented her admission of intentional theft on record. But I had one more revelation that would destroy their defenses completely. "Mother, I know about the insurance fraud too." Her face went white. During my investigation, I had discovered that she had filed a false insurance claim on my house 6 months before selling it, claiming vandalism and water damage that never occurred. The insurance company had paid them $12,000 for repairs that were never needed because they were already planning to sell the property. "The insurance investigator will testify that you submitted fake damage photos and contractor estimates," I continued. "You have committed insurance fraud on top of everything else. This is a pattern of criminal behavior, not a family misunderstanding." My father tried one last desperate manipulation. "Serafina, you are destroying your own family over money. Is your career really more important than your parents and brother? We can work this out without involving all these government people." His words might have worked 2 years ago, before my diplomatic training taught me to recognize emotional manipulation and prioritize principles over comfort. "Dad, you destroyed our family when you chose theft over honesty. You had 2 years to discuss financial problems with me honestly. Instead, you chose fraud, forgery, and literally declaring me dead to steal my home." The FBI formally arrested my parents that evening. The charges included federal wire fraud, forgery of diplomatic documents, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to violate international property protections. Their beach condo was immediately placed under asset seizure pending investigation into the source of funds used for purchase. The arrest of my parents created immediate shockwaves throughout our extended family and community. But it also revealed unexpected allies and additional enemies I had not anticipated. Within 48 hours of the FBI arrests, I received dozens of phone calls from relatives taking sides, creating battle lines that would define the next phase of this legal war. My paternal uncle Richard Walsh called me with surprising support. "Serafina, I want you to know that your father borrowed $15,000 from me last year, claiming it was for your emergency medical expenses overseas. He said you were too proud to ask for help directly and had sworn him to secrecy. Now I realize he was already planning this theft and testing whether family members would question his stories about your situation." This revelation added another dimension to the fraud. My parents had been systematically lying to extended family members for over a year, creating fictional crises to explain their sudden financial improvements and prepare ground for the eventual property theft. Uncle Richard provided bank records showing multiple suspicious loans and gifts he had made based on fabricated emergencies. But the family divisions became ugly quickly. My maternal grandmother, Helen Morrison, called to berate me for betraying family loyalty over property disputes that could be settled privately. "Your parents raised you and sacrificed everything for your education," she declared with venom in her voice. "Now you are trying to send them to prison because they made one mistake in judgment. No house is worth destroying your mother and father." Her attack revealed the family enabling system that had allowed my parents' manipulative behavior to flourish for years. When I explained that this involved federal crimes and international law violations, not simple property disputes, she dismissed my concerns entirely. "You always were too good for this family with your college degrees and fancy government job. Your parents deserve better than being abandoned by an ungrateful daughter who cares more about career than family." The conversation ended with her declaring that I was no longer welcome at family gatherings and would be excluded from inheritance considerations. Several aunts and cousins echoed similar sentiments, choosing to support my parents rather than acknowledge the severity of their crimes. However, unexpected allies emerged from professional networks I had built during my diplomatic career. Ambassador Reynolds connected me with Foreign Service Security, who revealed that property theft targeting diplomatic personnel had been increasing, and my case could help establish stronger legal precedents to protect other officers. "Serafina, your willingness to pursue federal prosecution sends a critical message that diplomatic protections have real consequences," explained Director James Patterson from State Department Security. "We are treating this as a test case for defending all Foreign Service families against similar fraud." The State Department assigned additional legal resources to ensure prosecution would succeed, including international law specialists who could demonstrate how my parents' actions potentially damaged American diplomatic credibility worldwide. Meanwhile, the investigation into Meridian Development Corporation yielded surprising discoveries about their business practices. FBI forensic accounting revealed that they had purchased several other properties through questionable documentation over the past 3 years, suggesting a pattern of exploiting vulnerable sellers or questionable ownership claims. Agent Martinez shared their findings during a strategy meeting. "Your parents were not their first victims of property fraud. Meridian Development specifically targets properties with complex ownership situations, elderly sellers, or overseas owners who cannot easily verify transactions. They use high-pressure tactics and below-market offers to complete quick sales before proper verification." This revelation transformed my case from personal family betrayal into a larger investigation of systematic real estate fraud affecting multiple victims. The FBI was building racketeering charges against Meridian Development, and my case provided crucial evidence of their willingness to proceed with purchases, despite obvious red flags about fraudulent documentation. The legal momentum continued building when Alexandria City Police discovered that my parents had attempted similar fraud against other family members. They had approached my deceased grandfather's estate executor claiming authority to sell his former residence using similar forged power of attorney documents. Only careful verification by the estate attorney had prevented that theft. "Your parents have been systematically attempting property fraud for at least 18 months, explained Detective Sarah Williams, who was coordinating local charges. "This was not a one-time mistake in judgment. This was a planned criminal enterprise targeting family property they believed they could steal without consequences. My brother Marcus became a crucial ally as the scope of our parents' deception became clear. During his FBI interview, he revealed additional lies they had told him about my overseas service and financial situation. "They told me you were making so much money in Europe that you did not need American property anymore," he said during our emotional conversation. "They said you had bought a castle in Prague and were planning to become a European citizen. I thought I was helping you liquidate American assets you no longer wanted." His testimony proved that my parents had created elaborate fictional narratives to justify their theft, demonstrating sophisticated premeditation rather than impulsive family financial desperation. The investigation also uncovered my parents' attempts to recruit other family members into their fraud scheme. Recorded phone conversations revealed my mother asking my cousin Diana to pose as my legal representative for additional property transactions, claiming I had authorized family members to handle my American business affairs while I lived permanently overseas. They were building a network of unwitting accomplices to expand their property theft operation, Agent Martinez explained. If your case had not exposed their methods, they likely would have targeted other family properties and potentially recruited extended family into federal conspiracy charges. As the evidence mounted, prosecution attorneys felt increasingly confident about securing convictions and significant prison sentences, but they also warned me that my parents' defense strategy would likely focus on attacking my character and claiming family financial desperation justified their actions. They are going to portray themselves as elderly parents, abandoned by an ungrateful daughter who chose career over family obligations, warned federal prosecutor Amanda Foster. Their attorney will argue that your long absence overseas demonstrated abandonment of property and family responsibilities. We need to be prepared for a very ugly trial where they attempt to make you the villain in this story. The emotional preparation for family trial warfare was complicated by my brother Marcus asking whether I could find forgiveness for our parents if they showed genuine remorse and made full financial restitution. "Sarah, I know what they did was horrible, but they are still our parents. Is there any way to resolve this without prison time that would destroy what is left of our family?" His question forced me to confront whether justice required maximum punishment or whether restoration and deterrence could be achieved through other means. But before I could fully consider those options, I discovered that my parents were secretly planning an even more devastating betrayal that would eliminate any possibility of family reconciliation. 3 weeks into the federal investigation, I discovered that my brother Marcus had been secretly feeding information to our parents' defense attorney. The betrayal came to light during what I thought was a routine strategy meeting with prosecutor Amanda Foster, when she revealed concerning leaks in our case preparation. Serafina Someone has been sharing our prosecution timeline and witness list with the defense team. They know exactly which evidence we plan to present and in what order. This suggests someone with access to our strategy sessions is providing detailed intelligence to your parents' lawyer. My heart sank as the implications became clear. Only family members and close allies had been privy to the specific details she mentioned. When Agent Martinez showed me phone records proving Marcus had been in daily contact with defense attorney Robert Kellerman, the betrayal felt like another knife in my back. I trusted him completely. I told my legal team struggling to process this new devastation. He seemed genuinely shocked by our parents' fraud. He provided crucial testimony about their manipulation and lies. How could he be working against me? The FBI had been monitoring communications as part of their investigation into potential co-conspirators, which revealed the disturbing scope of Marcus's double dealing. Recorded conversations showed him reporting our legal strategy, while simultaneously helping our parents hide additional assets from federal seizure. In one particularly damning phone call, Marcus told our mother, "Sarah's attorneys think they have enough evidence for 20-year sentences, but they are planning to offer plea deals if you cooperate and make full restitution. You need to transfer the remaining money from the joint account before they freeze everything." His betrayal was not simply information sharing. He was actively helping our parents evade financial accountability and criminal consequences. Bank records showed he had helped them move $80,000 to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, using his own financial credentials to avoid detection by federal asset seizure protocols. But the most devastating revelation came when I confronted him directly at his apartment in Richmond. His response shattered any remaining illusions about family loyalty I might have harbored. "Sarah, you were never going to forgive them anyway," he said with calculated coldness. "Mom and Dad promised me $50,000 if I helped them avoid prison time. That money means more to me than your sense of justice or whatever diplomatic principles you think are so important." His words revealed that this had never been about family reconciliation or misunderstanding. Marcus had chosen money over integrity, just like our parents, but with the added betrayal of pretending to support me while sabotaging my case behind my back. "You realize you have committed federal obstruction of justice and conspiracy charges?" I asked, hoping some part of my brother still cared about consequences. He laughed bitterly. "What are they going to do, arrest the whole family? You have already destroyed Mom and Dad. I might as well get something out of this disaster before you ruin everyone's life with your government vendetta." The FBI arrest warrant for Marcus came within 48 hours. Agent Martinez personally handled his apprehension, which occurred at his workplace in front of his colleagues and customers. The charges included obstruction of justice conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and aiding in the concealment of criminal assets. "Your brother's betrayal actually strengthens our case against your parents," Prosecutor Foster explained during our emergency strategy session. "His actions prove this was an ongoing criminal conspiracy, not a one-time family mistake. The fact that they recruited him to obstruct federal investigation demonstrates consciousness of guilt and willingness to expand their criminal behavior." But Marcus's betrayal had seriously damaged our prosecution timeline. His intelligence sharing had allowed my parents' attorney to prepare counter-evidence and alternative narratives that complicated our straightforward fraud case. Defense attorney Kellerman now knew exactly which witnesses we planned to call and had time to prepare detailed cross-examinations designed to undermine their credibility. More significantly, Marcus had warned our parents about impending asset seizures, allowing them to hide substantial amounts of stolen money in accounts that would take months for federal investigators to locate and freeze. The prospect of recovering my financial losses had diminished considerably due to his interference. The emotional impact was perhaps worse than the legal complications. Discovering that my brother had been lying to my face while secretly plotting against me felt like losing the last member of my family worth saving. Our parents had revealed themselves as thieves and manipulators, but I had believed Marcus was simply a victim of their deception, rather than a willing participant in ongoing fraud. During our final conversation before his arraignment, he made one last attempt to justify his betrayal that revealed the depth of his selfishness and resentment. "You always got everything handed to you because you were the smart one, the successful one, the one with the fancy career," he said through the jail phone. "Mom and Dad spent their savings sending you to college while I had to work minimum wage jobs and take community college classes. When they finally tried to get something back for all their investment in you, you turned them into criminals, rather than sharing what you owed them." His distorted perspective on our family dynamics showed how thoroughly our parents had poisoned his understanding of fairness and obligation. They had convinced him that my education and career success created debts I owed to family members rather than achievements I had earned through my own efforts and sacrifices. "Marcus, they stole my house and committed federal fraud. This was never about sharing or family investment. This was about theft lies and criminal behavior that you chose to enable and participate in." "Whatever helps you sleep at night, Sarah. I hope your precious diplomatic career was worth destroying your entire family." The conversation ended with him hanging up, leaving me to face the reality that my parents' corruption had infected my brother so completely that he was beyond redemption. The family I had hoped to rebuild after exposing the truth about the property theft no longer existed in any meaningful way. As I left the jail, Agent Martinez provided one final piece of disturbing information about Marcus's cooperation with our parents. We found evidence that your brother was planning to claim he had been manipulated by you into providing false testimony against your parents. He was going to recant his earlier statements and claim you had coached him to lie about their intentions and actions. The scope of his betrayal was total. Not only had he been working against me secretly, but he had been preparing to publicly destroy my credibility and potentially sabotage the entire prosecution. Only his arrest for obstruction had prevented him from implementing this final act of treachery. I realized that my fight for justice had cost me my entire biological family, but it had also revealed their true character in ways that painful honesty demanded I acknowledge and accept. Just when the case seemed most damaged by Marcus's betrayal, an unexpected ally emerged who would provide the evidence needed to ensure justice prevailed. Catherine Brennan, a forensic accountant with the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, had been quietly investigating Meridian Development Corporation for money laundering activities connected to international real estate fraud. Serafina, your case opened a door into a much larger criminal organization, Catherine explained during our first meeting at the Federal Building in Alexandria. Meridian Development has been purchasing fraudulently obtained properties and immediately flipping them to overseas buyers who use the transactions to launder money from illegal activities. Your parents unknowingly became part of an international financial crime network. Her investigation had uncovered financial records proving that Robert Castellano, Meridian Development's president, had known my property sale involved forged documents, but proceeded anyway because he needed inventory for his money laundering operation. Foreign buyers in Eastern Europe had already agreed to purchase the developed property for twice its actual value as a way to move illegal funds into American real estate markets. Castellano's organization specifically targets properties with complex ownership situations because they create plausible cover stories for questionable transactions, Catherine continued. Your diplomatic protection status actually made your property more valuable to them because it suggested sophisticated legal complications that would discourage investigation. This revelation transformed the prosecution strategy completely. Rather than simply pursuing my parents for family property fraud, federal prosecutors could now demonstrate their participation in organized financial crimes with international implications. The penalties for racketeering and money laundering conspiracy carried much longer sentences than simple wire fraud. Catherine's forensic analysis also revealed the complete financial trail of my stolen property sale proceeds. Using sophisticated banking surveillance tools, she had tracked every dollar my parents received and identified exactly where they had hidden assets to avoid federal seizure. Your parents transferred money through 6 different financial institutions and 3 offshore jurisdictions, she explained, showing me detailed charts of fund movements. But international banking cooperation agreements allow us to freeze and recover these assets regardless of where they tried to hide them. The recovered funds included not only the original property sale proceeds, but also accumulated interest and penalties that would actually exceed my financial losses from the theft. More importantly, the complex money movement patterns provided additional evidence of sophisticated criminal planning rather than impulsive family financial decisions. But Catherine's most valuable contribution was her connection to Elena Vasquez, a former Meridian Development employee who had been secretly documenting the company's illegal activities for over 2 years. Elena had been waiting for the right opportunity to expose their crimes without becoming a target for retaliation. Elena has recordings, financial documents, and email communications proving that Meridian Development routinely purchases properties they know involve fraudulent sales, Catherine explained. She also has evidence showing how they coordinate with international money laundering networks to maximize profits from these illegal transactions. When I met Elena at a secure federal facility, her testimony provided the final pieces needed to ensure comprehensive prosecution of everyone involved in stealing my property. Her evidence showed that Castellano had specifically instructed his real estate agents to target overseas Americans' military personnel and diplomatic families because their extended absences created opportunities for family-based property fraud. They have a whole system for identifying vulnerable properties, Elena explained, sharing internal company documents. They research family dynamics, financial pressures, and relationship conflicts to find situations where relatives might be willing to participate in questionable property sales. Her documentation proved that Meridian Development had provided my parents with template documents for creating fake power of attorney papers and had coached them on how to present convincing stories about my supposed authorization of the sale. Rather than being victims of my parents' fraud, Castellano's organization had been active participants who enabled and encouraged the criminal activity. Elena's evidence also revealed that my case was part of a larger pattern affecting dozens of military families and foreign service personnel. Meridian Development had stolen properties from Army families deployed overseas, Navy personnel on submarine assignments, and State Department employees serving in remote locations where communication with American relatives was limited. Your willingness to fight back legally disrupted their entire operation, Elena told me. Most of their previous victims either never discovered the theft until years later or chose to settle privately rather than face the complications of federal prosecution. Federal prosecutors used Elena's evidence to expand the investigation into a comprehensive racketeering case that would destroy Meridian Development's criminal organization and establish legal precedents protecting military and diplomatic families from similar fraud. But perhaps the most personally satisfying discovery was Elena's documentation of my parents' interactions with Castellano's criminal organization. Recorded conversations proved that they had not been naive victims manipulated by sophisticated criminals, but willing participants who had actively sought criminal assistance in stealing my property. Your mother specifically asked for help creating believable fake death certificates, Elena revealed, playing audio recordings of planning meetings. She wanted to make sure the documentation would withstand scrutiny from any lawyers or government officials who might investigate the sale. The recordings destroyed any remaining possibility that my parents could claim innocent mistakes or family desperation as motivations for their fraud. They had deliberately sought criminal assistance and had shown no remorse or concern about the legal consequences of their actions. Catherine's investigation also provided evidence that my brother Marcus had been aware of the money laundering aspects of the property sale from the beginning. Bank records showed he had been promised ongoing payments from Meridian Development in exchange for recruiting additional military and diplomatic families for similar fraudulent property schemes. Marcus was not just helping your parents avoid prosecution, Catherine explained. He was actively working to expand their criminal network by identifying other vulnerable families they could target for property theft. With Elena's testimony, Catherine's forensic evidence, and the expanded federal investigation prosecutor Amanda Foster felt confident about achieving maximum sentences for everyone involved in the conspiracy. More importantly, the case would establish legal protections preventing similar crimes against other American families serving overseas. Serafina, your decision to pursue federal prosecution rather than private settlement has protected countless other diplomatic and military families from becoming victims of this criminal organization, Amanda told me during our final pretrial strategy meeting. Your courage in facing family betrayal and pursuing justice has had impact far beyond your personal situation. The federal trial lasted 6 weeks and resulted in complete vindication of my decision to pursue criminal prosecution rather than private family reconciliation. My parents received sentences of 12 and 14 years respectively for racketeering, conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, and forgery of federal documents. Marcus received 8 years for obstruction of justice and conspiracy charges. Robert Castellano and his Meridian Development associates received sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years for operating a criminal enterprise. But the most satisfying moment came during victim impact statements, when I finally had the opportunity to address my family's betrayal directly and publicly. Standing before the federal judge with my parents and brother seated at the defendant table in orange prison uniforms, I spoke not just for myself, but for all the military and diplomatic families they had victimized. Your Honor, this was never about money or property disputes. This was about respect for the sacrifices Americans make serving their country overseas and the legal protections that exist to support their service. My parents chose to violate international diplomatic protocols, federal fraud statutes, and basic family trust because they believed their immediate gratification mattered more than their daughter's career and safety. My mother tried to interrupt with claims about family abandonment and ingratitude, but Judge Patricia Harrison quickly silenced her attempts at manipulation. The defendant will remain silent during victim impact statements. You have forfeited any right to justify actions that threatened American diplomatic security and constituted systematic criminal fraud. The financial restitution exceeded $400,000, including recovered property sale proceeds, accumulated interest, legal fees, and punitive damages for diplomatic property violations. But more importantly, the federal asset seizures had recovered every dollar my family had stolen and hidden, including the beach condo luxury cars and offshore accounts Marcus had helped them establish. The recovered funds allowed me to purchase a beautiful historic home in Georgetown, ironically much more valuable than the property my parents had stolen. The diplomatic protections I had established for my original residence transferred to my new home, ensuring that no future family conflicts could threaten my housing security. Elena Vasquez became an unexpected friend and ally who helped me understand that my family's betrayal reflected their character deficiencies rather than my failures as a daughter or sister. Her courage in exposing Meridian Development's criminal network inspired me to consider how my own experience could protect other families. Serafina, you showed that diplomatic families do not have to be vulnerable targets for criminals or manipulative relatives, Elena told me during our celebration dinner after the sentencing. Your case established legal precedents that will protect military and foreign service families for decades. 6 months after the trial, I received a promotion to senior diplomatic attaché with responsibilities for developing international security protocols. My experience fighting family-based property fraud had given me insights into vulnerabilities facing American personnel overseas that proved valuable for State Department policy development. The professional recognition felt gratifying, but the personal growth was more significant. I had learned to distinguish between family loyalty and family enablement, between forgiveness and accountability, between love and manipulation. My parents and brother had taught me painful but necessary lessons about setting boundaries and protecting myself from people who would exploit family relationships for criminal purposes. My chosen family now includes Elena, Ambassador Reynolds' Uncle Richard, who had supported me throughout the legal battle, and several diplomatic colleagues who understand the unique challenges of foreign service life. These relationships are built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine care, rather than blood obligations or manipulative expectations. The most unexpected gift was reconnecting with my grandfather's sister, Aunt Margaret, who had been estranged from our family for years due to my parents' manipulative behavior. She reached out after reading news coverage of the trial, explaining that she had cut contact because she recognized their toxic patterns long before I did. Serafina, I am so proud of you for having the strength to stand up to their manipulation, she told me during our first meeting in over 15 years. Your parents drove away everyone who refused to enable their selfishness. You chose justice over comfort, and that takes incredible courage. Aunt Margaret, now 86 and living independently in Vermont, has become a source of family history and wisdom that my parents had hidden from me. She shared stories about my grandparents' values of integrity and service that explained where my own moral compass had developed despite my parents' influence. Looking back 18 months after my parents' arrest, I realized that their betrayal was ultimately a gift that freed me from toxic family obligations and revealed my own strength and independence. I learned that blood relationships without mutual respect and honesty are meaningless, while chosen relationships built on shared values and genuine care create the foundation for authentic happiness and security. My career continues to flourish, my financial situation is stronger than ever, and my personal relationships are based on honesty rather than manipulation. The family that tried to destroy my future actually gave me the opportunity to build something much better than what I had lost. So let me ask you something that has been weighing on my mind since this whole ordeal began. Have you ever had family members who prioritized their greed over your well-being and success? Maybe they justified stealing from you or sabotaging your opportunities by claiming family loyalty should override your individual rights. I learned that real family protects and supports each other's growth, rather than exploiting relationships for personal gain. Your thoughts and experiences matter to me, so please share them in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between family peace and personal justice? How did you find the strength to stand up to relatives who tried to manipulate you through guilt and obligation? Hit that like button if this story resonated with your own experiences of family betrayal and recovery. And please subscribe, because I have more stories about how international law, diplomatic protections, and federal investigations can provide justice when family relationships become toxic and criminal. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they deserve respect from family members and that legal consequences for fraud and theft are appropriate regardless of blood relationships. Thank you for supporting me through sharing this difficult but ultimately empowering journey. I hope my experience helps you recognize that choosing justice over family manipulation is not betrayal. It is self-respect and courage that protects not just yourself, but other potential victims. Remember that real love never requires you to accept abuse, theft, or criminal behavior, and that chosen family built on mutual respect is infinitely more valuable than blood relationships built on exploitation and lies.